Welcome to How to Perform an Annual Review and Plan for the Year. So for today's agenda, we will be reviewing how to analyze and report on historical information for this past year from the perspective of a project manager and an executive officer or a controller in an enterprise organization. With analysis of this review information, then each of these roles as project manager and the executive level will be able to be better equipped to plan effectively for that following year, incorporating any lessons learned and being able to forecast the revenue and profit for this upcoming year. So most of you have probably seen our Unanet Universe Lifecycle logo here. Unet's a project-based enterprise resource planning solution. And today we'll be focused on this optimized green bubble here, assessing historical metrics of your current and finished projects and determine how to best forecast more accurately, the yellow bubble here, for your next year. We're moving forward in our accounting financials in Unanet, thus having a fully integrated single source of information, which will include this financial package coming up at the end of 2013.
Hi, Sherry. This is Rebecca with Sevatech. Is there a password for the webinar?
No, I don't believe so. Should be your own password.
Okay, I'm getting a message at organizer login with an email of unanet@unanet.com and then a password, and I can't log in. I can't see it otherwise.
Yeah, you probably need to log out and go to your original registered approval.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry.
So let's move on. Going through our overview here of, it's really important. I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to talk about Unanet access and the overview of this information. There are roles that you see in a person's profile: admin, HR, time user, expense user, project manager, project viewer. Those roles, you can verify which roles you have set by clicking on that preference button again on the top right-hand side. This is important to recognize what role you have been assigned by your administrator. Roles are the highest level of access in the Unanet system. So in order for a project manager to have any project management function in Unanet, they have to have this role checked in their person profile. Then there's the organization access, this is also found in the person profile as well, but it's the next level of access to information. Just because someone is a project manager doesn't mean that they're a project manager on all projects or should have access to all the people. So in the Organization Access tab, you then give access or restrict access to which projects and which person organizations that a project manager has access to. And then you could further limit access at the project level, and this is where you can give certain people rights to that project base on their roles and the assignments. So the project roles are very important because most of you do have some kind of project manager or project lead role within your organization. So again, this is very important. The project manager is considered the highest level project role in Unanet. They have access to manipulate project settings, create projects, review and change them, and they have access to all project reports. A project lead has limited access to the project settings. They still have access to the project-related reports, but cannot set up projects or assign people in the same way a project manager can. The project approver is much like the manager role, and this is tied specifically to the approval of time and expenses, the approval process. So then there's the project viewer role, and again, this is really just a read-only access to project reports like the people viewer. And so we're going through the webinar. Take notes of any reports or possible reporting options that you haven't seen or executed before, and be aware that the information that you can view is based on your roles, org access, and project roles. For many of you with years of experience behind you, your business should be running like a well-oiled machine, right? Actually, it's not always the case. Sometimes a business continues to grow, and we sometimes get so tied up in those day-to-day activities we forget to step back and conduct a high-level review of how our business is functioning. So to detect any areas which are not operating at its peak, it's key, and that's where Unanet comes in. We can help you to take control by reporting on that past historical metrics. So we can help you in understanding which projects had higher costs than others and why. What trends did you see? Are there areas you can cut back? And even if your profit's booming, where is that revenue really coming from? Which projects, which clients, which lines of business? Which projects stayed on schedule and which ones didn't? And if they didn't, why didn't they? And how well did the project stay on course with the budget that you created for last year? Was it more? Was it less? Did they need more or less resources? And for the past year, was my team fully utilized and evenly distributed across the work so that I had to accomplish? And if it wasn't, why not? All of this data is in Unanet. So let's take advantage of this to review last year in preparation to forecast this coming year's budget. And of course, you could review on a quarterly or monthly basis. Real-time data is always there and accessible. But here we're going to review for the past year. So here's Tom Brokaw. He's our project manager. I know. Original, I know. Tom has the project manager role for these 4 projects. So this is what he has access to see. So Tom wants to view how much time was charged on each of his projects last year and how much revenue each project brought in. So he can easily review the total hours worked on his 4 projects he's in charge of. And you can report on any date range, but for our purposes, Tom has been tasked to review this past year's status for his projects for the year. Customers with any license type can execute this project actual summary report, and you can summarize hours and billable revenue based on bill rates. Now, this report has some powerful options to report at a more granular level in the work breakdown structure of your project if you had tasks or child-level tasks, or parent tasks and child-level tasks. I'll be showing this to you live in my demo Unanet shortly. So what if Tom needs to know each of the bill rates that were used last year in preparation for updating this coming year's rates? So you could change one reporting option using that same report and view each of the bill rates that were charged on the project. Now, do note that because Tom is the project manager for just these 4 projects, these are the only projects he can report on. Still, with all the license type, what if Tom needs to know who worked on what project and what was their associated revenue contribution? Again, same report, modifying one reporting option to show people, and I can show each of the resources that charged on the project and their associated contribution of revenue. Again, by changing the reporting options, I could view at any level of detail or roll up to a particular task level as well in the reporting criteria. What if Tom needs to view expenses incurred for each of the projects? You can report expenses along with time or view just those expenses if you wanted to. Or what if the HR administrator needed to report on how much jury duty the employees took last year? Using this same report on just leave projects, they can set up maybe with a jury duty task that HR admin could report on how many hours were charged and maybe decide for this coming year if the budget of hours should be more or less. So let's move on to another powerful report also available with all the license types. Tom now needs to know how well he scoped the level of effort and budgeted his projects. You can compare your budgets prepared at the beginning of 2012 with the actual metrics of work done or charged. This is a summary view of budgeted hours versus actual hours. 3 of these projects were under budget, but why is that space station project over budget? You might need to review actual charges for labor and expenses. So with one reporting option change to select the total charges, we can understand what did it really take to perform and complete the activities versus what we originally budgeted based on any initial or revised scope of work. Unanet gives you a mechanism and the data to unravel or analyze why you finished the year with the actuals that you did and why. This report shows Tom was fairly close on his budget estimates for charges on all except the data warehouse. Tom needs to review further what he based his previous budgets on and determine the best budget estimate for this coming year at the project level. Well, what is the budget here? Where does that number come from? Where is it derived from? From the Project Profile Budget tab. There's the list of the hours and the cost and bill labor budgets, and these are input by the project manager for that project. So how well did Tom plan for this past year? With the Premier Portfolio license, if Tom needs to know how well he planned last year against the actuals charged on his projects, by changing another option to include plans, those with the portfolio license type can view not only the budgets and the actual hours worked, but the baseline plan that might have been created last year. The project manager can create a baseline of resources and their associated costs, including expenses, and have this compare to what activity that actually happened. And this report can be modified for giving more granular details at the task level. Well, what if Tom needs to know what are my true costs on my 4 projects, or what are those burden costs? Up to this point, you have reported on labor costs and expense costs possibly, along with the plans created in a budget. But to really understand how competitive you are, you need to evaluate your indirect costs, such as overhead or fringe G&A. Some of you might need to evaluate your indirect costs with a project or a report that you use in Excel, a profit and loss report, or maybe a job summary report. Some of you might refer to as a JSR. Well, with labor and ODCs already collected daily in Unanet, so we can produce this report as well. And this is available with the project tracking license. It shows direct labor and any ODCs associated with this time period, and any indirect costs, which could be tailored to meet your organization's requirements. Formulas can be input for this particular report and customized or tailored for what you need to report on. You can set up multiple cost structures in Unanet to be implemented. So maybe you have meet the needs of different locations with different cost structures, or business units that have different cost structures or overhead. So the project manager can report on all the projects that he or she has access to. This is great because this one summary report, the project manager can report on the total burden cost and know revenue, profit or loss, and even the profit percentage. And you can report for the calendar or fiscal year, and also just the project's range, as well as for the total up-to-date revenue and profit. And the PM, the project manager, can drill down to view exactly what the other direct costs entailed. So now note the specific direct labor and their costs are not available to Tom, just the ODC information. So this organization was set up not to allow visibility into cost rate information and have Tom be able to view individual employee rates. I also wanted to note that one of my favorite options here is to roll all your projects into one reporting block to view the overall profit revenue for all 4 of Tom's projects in one report. This is really especially useful for customers who are interested in viewing an overall contract view of financials, as well as an individual project or task order view of financials. So how many of you do you need to see that burn rate of how hours were used over the course of the year? With the portfolio license, you can report on a periodic version of this project periodic performance report. It's really hard to see. I've done this reporting for monthly, but I did execute this report on a quarterly basis, kind of blew it up so you can have a better look at what's being reported by month, the budgets versus the actuals of what actually happened. Now you can repeat, this could be even at a daily or weekly time period or semi-monthly. So looking closer at this PS upgrade, it shows the hours that were burned. much faster than my budget here. So a project manager needs to really understand why this budget did not accommodate for the burn rate of hours that was incurred for this past year on this particular PS upgrade project. But this report also allows you to compare plans versus actuals versus budgets at the project and the task level. You can show periods and areas that you need to look at and to determine why the hours were not being worked or overworked at that stage, and are there any critical paths, being able to narrow down the time period and maybe to the task level or subtask level. Another very important assessment is, well, how well did I distribute the workload for my projects? Were there any peaks and valleys, and why? Was that final utilization number for my resource team, what was it for 2012? Well, my favorite report within Unanet provides quick knowledge on my resource management, showing how well my resources were used. This is available with the portfolio license type, this People Resource Allocation Report, and it shows the project manager the percentage of time each resource worked for a time period. In my case, I did a monthly, but I could do, you know, weekly or, again, quarterly or even daily. So here you really, you should not be seeing any unbalanced resource loading for 2012, ideally. Here I've got several people that didn't even work at all here in my demo database. Now the great thing here is you can drill down on a resource name. Here, for instance, I've drilled down into Bob Costas, and I can view the projects and even at the task level what Bob charged time to this past year at the same periodic level as the report was, in this case monthly. And the color thresholds can be tailored as well to reflect what you need to view for your business rules, whether it's 0 to 24 is really the red, or maybe it's 0 to 50% is really the red indication. So let's stop for a moment here, and I'm going to call Holly up here. Holly, how are you doing?
I'm good, Sherry. How are you?
I'm doing great. Do we have any questions that we want to take at this point in time? Do you want to share with us?
We do. We have one question in particular regarding annual reviews and utilization. And the question is, it's important to use and look at utilization in an annual review. I've not been able to find such a report. This report does exist. It's the Resource Allocation Report, and it is part of our portfolio product. You also can access this information via the Performance Report. We have a couple other questions coming in, but we'll let you go ahead, Sherry, and we'll do a couple more in a minute.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I did want to take time out here to go into my Unanet system and take a look at some of these reports. So here I've logged in as Tom Brokaw. He's that project manager. He has a project manager role. Remember that Unanet's a web-based solution. It's accessible via your favorite internet browser. I'm using Chrome right now, and it's available, of course, anytime, anywhere. And I'm logged in as Tom Brokaw, that project manager, and I've got a number of saved reports here that I've saved off, as well as a saved list, and they're all on my left-hand side here. You can see there's a number of graphs and charts available for me to immediately view once I log into the system to have a quick glimpse of where I am with my projects and what's happening now. This is a project portfolio license type, so I wanted to just let you guys know that. I also wanted to show you the preferences link here, and being able to show the roles that I have set up for my project manager. He does have, Tom does have bill rate and billing view information, as well as expense manager and project approver and project management. He's a resource assigner and resource planner as well. And this is where you would note to find what your role is in your Unanet system. Okay, so going back to the home tab here. I wanted to show a few reports here. That first one that I talked about in the presentation, the Project Actuals Summary Report. You can see here I have settings based on the task level and the resources, and also showing the bill rate for each one of my data projects. Coming here, I did want to show some of the reporting options. I have set for my reports here the previous year a relative time period. This is useful, these relative time periods, being able to say the current month. That way you don't have to modify those date ranges each time. You can save the report off with the relative time period and always come back to it, and it's always going to work on that previous year or that current quarter or that current week. And here I've only included the time, and you can see I've shown tasks, and I can also show them individually, or I could roll up at a certain level. And I've chosen to show my resources as well and those billable rates. A lot of options here, and I can run that report and showing roll-ups at this point in time. Now, I did want to just refresh your memory about going back to the criteria and how to save a report. Save criteria. I have this name here where I've given the total hours in charge for my 2012 review. If I click on whatever dashboards that I want to save that report off, I can click these four and hit Save. Now, it does exist on my home page, so it says, yes, I just want to replace it. And it will show up the total hours and charges. You can see here I have a number of them right here. So that's the Project Actuals Summary Report. And again, Tom Brokaw has access to these four reports. Remember the Space Station, Data Warehouse, PS Upgrade, and SAP IOU. That's all he has access to, either via org access or project access. Another report that I did want to show you really quickly is that the Budget versus Actual report. Here's the one that I've saved in hours, and it's just here in the summary report based on labor hours, but I can go back to the criteria and scroll down a bit and give a lot more level of detail. I can choose budget versus plans versus actuals. If you had plans, I can do just the labor charges or just expense charges or both total charges, and I can show the people associated as well as tasks to understand how well I did with my actuals versus the budget that I planned, or even in this case when I selected plans. I did want to show another cost revenue and summary report. Here's that profit loss report, or sometimes you refer to as a JSR, showing the burdened or true cost, if you will. And I did want to show that Tom Brokaw, as a project manager, does have access to drill into plans, budgets, and actuals, and that will give the actual summary report for those ODCs or those expenses, if you will, and they're tied to the expense type set up in Unanet. Moving along really quickly, I did want to show, since there was a question about the resource utilization report, here is that report. It is really the people resource allocation report. It's again available with the portfolio license type. And remember that I talked about being able to drill into to find out what Bob Costas or any person has been working on. What did we work on this past year? And it looks like Bob has worked on these two projects, and it's a task at the task level 2 to show the number of hours he charged for each month. In this case, I selected months. I did want to point out under the Reports tab, if you follow with me to the Reports tab, that People Resource Allocation Report is right here, People Resource Allocation Report. And I don't know if you, some of you might not know that if you click on that little I there with a period with each associated report, it kind of gives you a quick quick hint on what that report is used for. In this case, are my people adequately planned and assigned? And there's that color coding for allocation based on daily, weekly, monthly, or even quarterly, if you will. So that's another hint there, just to hover over that little I, and it'll tell you what that report is about. The cost summary and status report I've shown, periodic, that JSR, the project cost summary, that profit and loss report, that's where this one is. And then the actual summary, the project actual summary report right here. So I hope you're taking notes. I do want to, in the aspect of time, want to jump back over to the presentation. And I really wanted to now take a look at that executive level. Chris Craig is our COO and president. So let's take a look at what he can view in the project. Now, in his case, he has access to all of the different organizations, the project management office, the professional services, the IT department, and the internal, my company that has all the administrative, maybe the leave projects, if you will. So his access to information is different than that project manager. So with the same project actual summary report available with that time license, the COO can run actuals with the associated cost information in dollars for all those lines of business and the internal company as well. So because Chris Craig has that cost rate manager role, the cost information is available in the reports for him. Well, because access and privileges are different for that COO, Chris can report on the budget versus the actuals based on cost rate information, like I said before, across all customers with this project performance review, and find out how well did we budget for all the projects going across all the customer lines of business as well as organizations. Here's that same job summary report available with the tracking and portfolio license type. But since Chris has access and privilege to view all enterprise projects and that cost information, he can drill down into, he has access and privilege to drill down to the actual based on cost information. You can do that for the labor cost and the budgets and what was planned initially. So he can view from the cost perspective how much each resource, and maybe each, if he specified labor category, what costs were incurred, and what true costs or burden costs to understand what the profit was for last year. Now here's a chart, the profit margin chart that I run per month. This is available with the project license, portfolio license. It provides the program managers and COO a means of tracking costs, comparing it to what has been billed, and show the accumulated margin. So each data point can be drilled down to view the dollar value at that point in time, as well as the actual work that was done during that particular time period. And here, in this case, it was for the month of February. Who worked on what, how many hours, and what was the cost of that. Chris can also analyze the total revenue for last year for each of those lines of business. This is available with the tracking and portfolio license type. I really like this report because it's a great one-line summary for each project or contract. It's really the big picture of your organization. And then finally, one last chart, this is probably one of my favorite charts, is that top 5 revenue producing projects this past year. And I can produce, I can drill into each colored section to know what was that project and what people, resources were on that project, and to the task level if I want to, and know what their associated contributions to the revenue are. And this really, when you drill down, you can see here, it's the project actual summary for that time period. Now, in preparation for planning for the coming year, all of this metric information would be analyzed, but how do you use this information going forward? I recommend creating a project template for each similar line of business, or a project that has a similar work breakdown structure, if you will, that you create new proposals, and those new activities from. So any lessons learned could be updated in the template here, and so when the copy project is used, that's the latest a copy project from a utility that was released in 9.5 that can copy all the associated information, such as the work breakdown structure, the duration of each one of those tasks and subtasks, the budget of hours, the budget of dollars you can see here as cost and bill budgets. So each one of those things can be copied from this template. All the lessons learned will be applied to this template and would be associated in the new activity, the new project and or the new proposal. Even the initial plans can be copied from the template to reflect any desired labor categories that would be needed to work on those different work activities. So let's take a break at this point in time, and I'm going to ping Holly again. Go back over here.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Holly.
Hello. How are you?
How are we doing?
A question.
Yeah,
we have lots of questions coming in.
Okay, great.
One of them, what is the difference between a plan and a budget? So budgets are related to assignments in Unanet, and budgets are available in any of our licenses, including time and tracking. If you're interested in using plans, planning or forecasting is only available in our project portfolio license type, and it provides an additional layer of forecasting without affecting any current assignments in the system. So if you have further questions about that, you can reach out to one of us here on the CAM team. Another question, do the hours reports, any report containing hours, reflect overtime hours as an hour, or does it use the 1.5 multiplier? And the logging of hours and any of the reports on hours are always going to use straight hours worked, what is logged. Another question that we have here is referencing using the reports and saving different criteria and then sharing or having that criteria reside on your dashboard. And the question is related to if you change the criteria and you resave it, but you move it from, say, the home dashboard to the project dashboard, then you will have different reports in those locations. If you want to overwrite a report, you would need to save it to the location you currently have it residing in at the time. One more that we will answer, how do we run hours and dollars in the same report? There are several different reports that can use that information, but one of the easiest to use is the Project Actual Summary Report. Now, as Sherry touched on in the beginning of the webinar, depending on your roles and access in the system, that is going to dictate what you see. So if you do not have access to rates, you're not going to see some of those dollar amounts. So keep that in mind and make sure you check on the access that you have to information. I'll turn it back over to you, Sherry.
Okay, great questions. I'm very pleased with those questions. Great job, guys. I did want to, at this point, pop back over into our Unanet system. And I wanted to log out as Tom Brokaw. Do you remember the project manager? And let's log into Unanet as Chris Craig. He is the COO and president, and he has different roles. And you can see here real quick, I wanted to show that to you. He also, I believe, has expense user, manager, project approver, but his org access is to all of the projects in the system. So a couple of the projects, let's see the project actuals. Let's look here. Oh, we're still logged in as Tom Brokaw. Let me log in here as Chris. There we go. This looks a little more familiar. So the project actuals, you can see here, he's not only reporting on customer 2 that Tom Brokaw had access to, but he's also reporting on the customer 1 line of business as well as the internal information for the My Company. Now I can go back to the criteria and report at a more granular level and report on tasks. And you can see here, because of his accessibility and role and org access and the roles that he has, the option is here to view billable charges or cost charges, and that wasn't available to Tom Brokaw, the project manager. So again, I can show the people here and run this report and show what my resources charged on these projects at the task level. Now going back to my criteria, I can save this criteria. It is already on the home dashboard, but I didn't save this particular reporting selection. But if I save it here now in my home and the project, it will have the new report with all these different reporting selections, which will be different, a little different from what I had before, just showing the basic report. Going back to that, you can see here, so now it doesn't show just the one-line summary. It is truly with those more level detailed reporting options. I did want to show the job summary report. And I did want to show that one option for this report, scrolling down a little bit here, you might not have known about this, is rolling up all the selected projects into a single block. This would show all projects not only associated with customer 1, but with customer 2 as well, and showing an overall profitability and revenue. This little organization needs some help because very low in red percentages. Now going back to my home dashboard, this profitability chart, let's take a look at some of these graphs here. If I click into here, this one shows the difference between the margin there between cost and bill, and I can drill down to any one of these to get to that actual summary report again and understand the resources and their associated hours and the billable amounts, in this case, the revenue. This shows the revenue contribution per each resource. I can also go to each point in time and know the actual dollar amount of that cumulative margin, and this is over the course of the entire year of 2012. And that's stored right here on Chris's home dashboard. And that top 5 revenue projects here, let's look into that one. That was one of my favorite pie, and I can drill down here and understand at the task level here which resources and their time and the billable total as well for my top 5 projects, top 5 revenue producing projects. So I do want to scoot back over to my presentation. And I wanted to look at the planning now for 2013 and from the perspective of Tom Brokaw. We're back to Tom Brokaw. He has access to that customer 2 and those 4 projects, if you can remember. So by changing one reporting option for that people resource allocation report that I showed, I can report now on plans going forward. Previously, it was reporting on actuals, and that was considered the current utilization, and we showed the utilization for the time period of the last 12 months, 2012. Now I'm showing for 2013 and showing the plans that I have. What are the plans that I have set up for my resources for this coming year? Same report, different option. Now I can drill down to understand for that particular time period. Here I've done it by month and understand who have I got planned for that month of March in this case. I can use this in combination with my people planner, my grid planner. This is an example that I have for at the project level and resources at the project level for multiple projects. And I've used here a plan for bi-monthly for just a full-time person to work on data warehouse and or PS upgrade for each one of these people. This is a percentage, if you will. The FTE is called a full-time equivalent. So in combination with this grid planner and that resource utilization or allocation report from the previous screen, I can determine who's available to work, and I can plan those people with potentially the right skill set, even if you wanted to set up your skills management and inventory for those persons. And be sure to plan the particular people for the particular projects going forward. Now, I have a whole specific webinar scheduled in 2 weeks, the resource management webinar on January 24th, that totally deals with just plans and the planning aspect and these plan sets, if you will, and that resource utilization and allocation. So let's go ahead and report on those plans with the periodic performance report, that project periodic performance report. I've reported here by quarter, just at the project level, to know what's my forecast of costs and also what's my margin going to be in a percentage. One switch of reporting options for the periodic cost report, the cost summary report that I showed earlier, was on budgets. Now I'm going to show it on these plans going forward, and you can view predicted burden cost on a periodic basis. In this case, I've done quarterly, so I can show it to you all on one screen. And you can predict what your profit's going to be and your profit margin is going to be, and if you need to adjust accordingly for this year. All right, Holly, any questions coming on board with the project manager and the planning for 2013?
Okay. I don't have any questions coming through yet on planning. I did have some question on burden cost reporting, question on the project margin report, and did that include burdens? It does not at this time. However, the following reports will report on burden costs if you are using at least a project tracking or project portfolio license type and you have the project costing features enabled. So the following reports will show burden cost: the project summary by cost element, project cost summary report, the cost summary report, and the cost summary and status report.
Okay, great.
We do have in 9.6, we're adding to that some features with EVM reporting and having a burden cost in the EVM reports as well. Here's another question. What license do we need for the resource planning reports? You do have to have a project portfolio license type to do resource planning. And the question about the resource management webinar coming up, if you go to the For Customers section of our Unanet.com website, that section, it's in text and it's at the top right side of the Unanet.com website. Click on that, and the second tab on that site gives you the entire webinar schedule for all of the customer or CAM webinars, webinars that are specifically for our customers to train them on the product. And that's all for now, Sherry.
Okay, great. If we have time at the end, I'll actually go to that site and show the schedule that's coming up. Great, thanks. I'm going to move forward here because I just have a couple of more slides that talks about the CXO, and then we'll go back into our system and look at some reports. So now we're going to look at the CXO, the COO and president here for our particular company here, Chris Craig. And let's take a look at some of the reports he has available for the plans of, and be able to view the forecast of the 2013, what's been set up by all his project managers. So if he needs to know and wants to view the forecast of revenue and profit for all the lines of business, he can run that cost summary and status report that you just mentioned. And here he's used the option to report on all and show everything on all projects in the one report. So he can see the overall big picture of what his revenue is going to be and that profit percentage for the year. So remember that revenue and summary report that I showed? It was the big picture report for all the projects, but giving a summary for each one of those projects. I can change one reporting option and report on the plans only and the plans for the time period of the current year. And voila, I have the big picture that I'm forecasting for this coming year. What are each of these projects going to be pulling in for revenue for this coming year? I can also view the remaining dollars funded, what's the funded value, and what's left to be the remaining of a value that's left based on the project profile's remaining funding value that's there set by the project manager. A couple of quick graphic dashboards for the executive to view for 2013. This is a list of all the enterprise's project schedules, and he can determine which projects are actually going to be ending during this calendar year of 2013, which will going across 2013 into 2014. Just an overall picture of the projects and their schedules. And the revenue by month, that project performance chart that shows a bar graph of the projected revenue on those plans that were made by all the project managers. And in this case, I've selected this chart to be shown by month for the year. And you can click into each month to know, the dollar value plan dollar, and the chart also could include budgets and plans periodically in a bar chart format. This is a great option as well to have on the dashboard to view when you log in the morning. So let's take a look at, is everybody still there? I'm going to switch back over to our system here. And we're still logged in as Chris Craig. So let's go back to the home dashboard here, and let's look at some of these reports for 2013. Here's the forecast report. This is really that periodic cost summary and status report. I've selected the criteria to report quarterly. Let's go back to the criteria here, and I can also show that option is selected to report on plans, as well as rolling up all the selected projects into one single block and know the overall big picture. And that summary report for each one of the projects I've saved off here. It lists each project, the current projects I've selected for plans, you can see, for the year, the calendar year coming up, 2013. And it even lists the billing type and what's happened for the current period for 2013 and the fiscal year and the beginning of time for whatever the date is, the beginning of that project to the current fiscal year. And let's quickly take a look at some of the graphs that I showed. Here's the Gantt chart that I wanted to show. Having that available on the home dashboard just to peek at when the user logs in. And the revenue forecast chart, bar chart. You can be able to drill down and know what those plans are at the project level for that particular month, as well as the accumulated value for those plans based on plans of the bill, the revenue. So any other questions before I wrap up with a few last slides? I have time for maybe one more question before we end right on time, Holly.
We don't have any other questions right at this time.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Sherry?
I can. I can.
Okay.
Thanks. I will continue on. Just another, I think, 2 slides, I believe. I wanted to let you know that we will be sending out a tip sheet after the webinar is over that just kind of puts in a table the different type of questions you would ask, and based on the type of information or metrics that you want to look at or analyze, the name of the Unanet report in Unanet that you can find on the report tab in Unanet, as well as some more familiar names that you might use in your situation of, resources by project or a job summary report, profit and loss, P&L report, and also listing what that report, the license type available. For instance, this project actual summary is available with all the different license types. So we'll be sending out this tip sheet to you after the webinar is over. We do record these webinars, as you saw that I started the recording earlier, and these are links to the recording as well as the CAM Customer Account Management webinar schedule to link into the Unanet.com system that Holly just mentioned a few minutes before. So in fact, let's go take a look at that right now. I have a link here, and we can send this presentation out to you as well with the hyperlink. You can see this is us today. Next week, because we are doing these weekly, we have the New Year's Unanet Administrator Tips, great tips of frequently asked questions that come through, and we will be able to help you out with these different items. And then the week after, January 24th, the Resource Planning for Project Success, along with the end of the month project managers knowing your project's profitability in Unanet. That's going to go in a much more detail in that job summary report or P&L report, just really kind of diving into what that is and all the different values there, and a little bit of a setup in the background of that for that burden, showing the burden cost. And then finally, our next customer meeting, we have dates, May 2nd and May 3rd at the Coronado Island Marriott Resort and Spa. The early bird registration the link is here, and I've got it set up here so you can do a hyperlink here. There are early bird rates, so you want to sign up early and get the fantastic early bird rates. And we really hope that you have seen something new today, some reporting option that you didn't know about before, some report that you didn't know about before that's going to provide you a different type of metrics that are available to you to be able to analyze your past information as well as going forward and planning if you have the ability to plan. If you have any questions, please give us a call or send us an email. We will be forwarding out the tip sheet to you after the webinar is over. And we have time for just one more question if there is another one. Holly?
We had a couple questions related to exporting Gantt charts or information to Microsoft Project, and there is an interface for Microsoft Project. I just suggest that you contact your customer account manager for details, because the information that flows back and forth between those two systems is going to be dependent on your setup. And that is, I think we've covered most of them.
Great, great. We really do appreciate, again, you taking time out from your very busy schedules to join us today for the webinar. We hope to see you again next week. Please share the webinar schedule and the recorded webinar and our presentation with everybody on your team. And we look forward to seeing you next week. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to just send a note to cam@unanet.com. Give us a call, and we are happy to help. Thank you again for joining. Have a great, great afternoon. For your